There's a lot of talk in the United States right now about how to deprogram and politically re-educate half the population. Perhaps it's a good idea. Let's discuss why. Hi, I'm Douglas Kruger. Welcome to BreakingWoke, how to identify, debunk, and dismantle dangerous ideas. The political baseline of the United States of America is its founding constitution. And in the first line of that constitution, it says that all men are created equal. For the better part of a century now, liberals have struggled with this idea, practicing a sort of condescending racism by which they engage in a messiah complex and believe that their role via the state is to rescue black people. The funny thing is, because people genuinely are equal, when liberals leave Black America alone, Black America prospers. In the 3 decades prior to the 60s, Black American prosperity was growing rapidly in line with their expanding liberties and rights. Then white liberals stepped in, implementing kindly progressive policies like Lyndon Johnson's disastrous war on poverty stopped that progress in its tracks. Nothing in the past century has harmed Black American prosperity quite as comprehensively as liberal condescension. Oddly, liberals appear to be immune to the economics on this one. Could this be because their deep-seated, unstated belief is that it cannot be possible for Black America to prosper without their aid? If so, why not? What's the underlying assumption here? We can do it, but you can't? That's called racism, and it's harming that demographic. Perhaps it is time for political re-education of half of America. If you are a white liberal, it may be time to hear the idea that black people are your equal. You're telling them for over half a century that they can't possibly make it without your help is patronizing. It creates political power for you, but it is patronizing, and it is historically inaccurate. The economics don't bear it out. This is not the only issue on which half the nation needs political re-education. There is liberal bigotry on several additional fronts, and it does just as much harm. For example, you've spent the past half-century calling conservatives Nazis and fascists. Now, this is not a new phenomenon, and it wasn't just as a result of the previous president. You called Ronald Reagan a Nazi and a fascist. Calling people Nazis and fascists appears to simply be a default knee-jerk reaction on your side of the political spectrum. And that's bigotry. At some point, you really do need to look up what a fascist actually believes, and I fear you're going to find that experience deeply discomforting. For that matter, you seem ignorant of what conservatives actually believe. Consider, conservative Christian George Washington founded your nation with its ideals of equality and freedom. Conservative Christian and Republican Abraham Lincoln emancipated the slaves. In the UK, conservative Christian Winston Churchill led the effort to resist Hitler. And conservative Christian Republican Ronald Reagan faced down the communist Russian Empire. To call conservatives Nazis is not merely juvenile, it is historically ignorant. But here we return to the political baseline of the United States, the Constitution. The values that the people you vilify, fight for, are all constitutional values: personal liberty, rule of law, freedom of speech and of the press, and the right to pursue happiness unmolested by the government. It has been a very, very long time since your side has believed in these qualities. Today, the liberal camp appears to believe in censorship, socialism, and the government playing God over people's lives by enforcing the social justice beliefs of a ruling elite. Permit me to point out to you, this is as anti-American as any set of beliefs could possibly be. Then there's your bigotry against the police. When George Floyd was killed, people across the political spectrum thought it horrific, utterly unacceptable. But only your side was unaware of how much of an anomaly it was. Your news outlets have been preaching a racist, bigoted police force for decades now, to dire consequences. And because honest Americans don't want a bigoted police force, several commissions, studies, inquiries have been done into the police to determine if this is real. But here again, you seem immune to facts. You are determined to believe the worst in others. This is the purest form of bigotry. And your bigotry here has dangerous consequences for the men and women who serve you, often at the risk of their own lives. So, Forget the buildings burnt to the ground in your mostly peaceful protests. Forget the people who paid for your narrative with their lives. Forget the businesses destroyed in predominantly poor black areas as you went about helping. Let's keep it simple. The police are a civic institution who serve you at great personal risk. The studies have shown that they are not rampant lunatics with guns hunting down people of color for sport. And your maintenance of this belief is childish. It's dangerous. It gets police officers ambushed and killed. It turns the youth against the very mechanism of law and order, indoctrinating them into believing that lawlessness is righteousness. So perhaps it is time to re-educate half the populace. At least half the populace have lost sight of the values of their own constitution. They practice a form of genteel racism that harms people of color. They slur their opponents as Nazis and fascists without the faintest sense of irony. And they spread hatred and bigotry toward their men and women in blue, vilifying them to the detriment of law and order in their own communities. All of that has to change. All of that has to be deprogrammed. Re-educating the liberal left may be the only way to save America.